Bonsoir. Welcome to the newcomers and welcome back for the others. Without any wait, let's go for chapter 17 of The Broken Empire, Prince of Thorns. The old corridors enfolded me, and 4 years became a dream. Familiar turns, the same vases, the same suits of armor, the same paintings, even the same guards. 4 years, and everything was the same, except me. In the niches, small silver lamps burned oil squeezed from walls in distant seas. I walked from one pool of light to the next, behind a guard whose armor beguiled my own. Mackin and Gomst had been led to separate destinations, and I went alone to whatever reception awaited. The place still made me feel small. Doors built for giants, sailing soaring so high that a man with a lance could scarcely touch them. We came to the West Wing, the royal quarters. Would Father meet me here, man to man, in the Arboretum? Souls bared beneath the planetarium dome? I had imagined him seated in the black claw of his thrones, brooding above the court, and me led toward them between the men of the Imperial Guard. I followed the single guard, feeling vaguely cheated. Did I want to be surrounded by armed men? Had I grown so dangerous? To be hipped with chains? Did I want him to fear me? 14 years old, and the king of Hankras quaking behind his bodyguard. I felt foolish for a moment. I brushed a hand over the hilt of my sword. They cast the blade from the metal that ran through the castle walls. A true heirloom with a heritage at the tall castle, predating mine by 1,000 years at least. I ached for confrontations then. Voices rose at the back of my mind, clamoring, fighting one against the other. The skin on my back tingled. The muscle beneath twitched for action. Abbas, Prince George. It was a guardsman. I nearly drew on him. No, I said. I forced myself to calmness. I see the king now. King Oliden has retired, Prince, the guard said. Was he smirking at me? His eyes held an intelligence I didn't associate with the palace guard. Asleep? I would have given a year of my life to take the surprise from those words. I felt like Captain Codden must have, the butt of a joke I had yet to comprehend. Sages awaits you in the library, my prince, the man said. He turned to go, but I had him by the throat. Asleep? They were playing with me. Father and this pet magician of his. This game, I said. I expect it will provide amusement to somebody. But if you worry me one more time, I will kill you. Think on it. Your piece in somebody else's game, and all you'll earn from it is a sword through the stomach. Unless you redeem yourself in the next 20 seconds. It was defeat, resorting to crude threat in a game of subtlety. But sometimes one must sacrifice a battle to win the war. Prince, Sages is waiting for you. I could see. I turned this smug superiority into terror. I'd stepped outside the rule of play. I squeezed his throat a little. Why would I want to speak to this Sages? What's he to me? He holds the king's favor. He holds it. But please, Prince York. He got the words out past my fingers. It takes no great strength to throttle a man if you know where to grip. I let him go and fell, gasping. In the library, you say? What's your name, man? Yes, my prince, in the library. He rubbed at his neck. Robert, my name is Robert Hoole. I strode out across the hall of spears, angling for the leather door to the library. I paused before it, turning back to Robert. There are turning points, Robert, forks in the path we follow through our lives, time that we'll look back to and say, if only. This is one of those times. It's not often we get them pointed out to us. At this point, you'll either decide to hate me or to serve me. Consider the choice carefully. I threw the library door open. It slammed back into the wall, and I walked through. In my mind, the library walls stretched to the very heavens, thick with books, pregnant with the written word. I learned to read at 3 years of age. I was talking with Socrates at 7, learning form and sing from Aristotle. For the longest time, I had lived in this library. Memory dwarfed reality. The place looked small now, small and dusty. I've burned more books than this, I said. Sages stepped out from the easel, given over to ancient philosophy. He was younger than expected, 40 at the most, wearing just a white clothes, like the Roman togara. His skin held the dusky hue of the Middle Lands, maybe Indus or Persia, but I could see it only in the rare spots the tattooist needled hadn't found. He wore the text of a small book on his living hide, cut there in the flowing script of the math magician. His eyes, well, I know we're supposed to cower beneath the gaze of potent men, but his eyes were mild. They reminded me of the cows on the castle road, brown and placid. His scrutiny was the thing that cut. Somehow, those mild eyes dug in. Perhaps the script beneath them bore the power. All I can say is that, for a time, uncounted, I could see nothing but the heat in his eyes, hear nothing but his breath, stir no muscle but my heart. He let me go, like a fish thrown back into the river, too small for the pot. We stood face to face, inches apart, and I'd no memory of closing the gate, but I'd come to him. We stood among the books, among the wise words of 10,000 years. Plato to my left, copied, and copied again. The moderns to my right, Russell, Popper, Xiang, and the rest. A small voice inside me, deep inside, called for blood. But the essence had taken the fire from me. "Father must depend upon you, Sages," I said. I twisted my fingers, wanting to want my sword. To have a pagan at court must vex the priest. If the Pope dare to leave Rome as his days, she'd be here to curse your soul to eternal hellfire. I had nothing but dogma with which to beat him. Sagios smiled, a friendly smile, like I'd just run an errand for him. "Prince York, welcome home." He had no real accent, but he ran his words out fluid and musical. Like a Saracen or a Moor, he stood no taller than me. In fact, I probably had an inch on him. He was lean, too, so I could have taken him to the floor there and then and choked the life out of him. One murderous thought bubbled up after another and leaked away. "There's a lot of your father in you," he said. Have you got him tamed too?" I asked. "One doesn't tame a man like Oliden and Crass." His strangely smile took an edge of amusement. I wanted to know the joke. He could manage me, but not my father? Or he could manipulate the king and chose to cover the fact with a smirk? I imagined the heathen's tattooed head shorn from his shoulders, his smile frozen, and blood pumping from the stump of his neck. In that instant, I reached for my sword and threw all my will behind the action. The pommel felt cold beneath my touch. I curled my fingers around the hilt, but before I could squeeze them tight, my hand fell like a dead thing. Sagios raised a brow at that. It had them shaved like his head and drawn back in. He took a step backward. "You're an interesting young man, Prince York." His eyes hardened, mild one moment, and in the next, dead as flint. "We should have to find out what makes you tick, yes? I'll have Robert escort you to your chamber. You must be tired." All the time he spoke, the fingers of his right hand traced words in the flowing script across his left arm, brushing over one symbol, jumping higher to a black crescent moon, underlining a phrase, underlying it again. I did feel tired. I felt lead in every limb, pulling me down. "Robert!" he called out loud enough for the corridor. He looked back to me, mild again. "I expect you'll have dreams, Prince, after so long away." His finger moved over new lines, left hand, right arm. He traced words blacker than night across the veins in his wrist. Dreams tell a man who he is. I struggled to keep my eyes open. On Sagios' neck, just to the left of his Adam's apple, amid all the tight-packed scrolls, was a letter, bigger than the rest, curled and recurled, so it looked like a flower. "Touch the flower," I thought. "Touch the pretty flower." And, as if by magic, My treacherous hand moved. It took him by surprise. My fingers at his throat. I heard the door open behind me. He's skinny, I thought. So skinny. I wonder if I could close my hand around his neck. I admitted no hint of violence, just curiosity. And there it was, my hand around his neck. I heard Robert's sudden intake of breath. Sergio stood frozen, his mouth half open, as if he couldn't believe it. I could barely stand. I could hardly keep the yowing from my voice. But I held his eye and let him think that the pressure I put on him was a threat and not to keep me from falling. My dreams are my own, Ethan, I said. Pray you're not in them. I turned then, before I fell, and strode past Robert. He caught up in the hall of spears. I've never seen anyone lay hand on Sergius, my prince. My prince, that was better. There was admiration in his voice, maybe genuine, maybe not. I was too tired to care. He is a dangerous man. His enemy die in their sleep. That or they're broken. Lord Jael left the court 2 days after disagreeing with a pagan in front of your father. They say he can't feed himself now and spend his days singing an old nursery rhyme over and over. I reached the west stair, Robert prattling beside me. He broke off all of a sudden. Your chamber is off the red corridor, my prince. He stopped and studied his boots. The princess has your former chamber. Princess? I didn't care. Tomorrow I would find out. I let him lead me to my room, one of the guest rooms of the red corridor. The chamber could have housed many a tavern I'd slept in, but it was a studied insult nonetheless. A room for a country baron or distant cousin visiting from the protectorates. I stopped at the door, reeling with exhaustion. Sigel's spell bit deeper, and my strength left me like blood from slight veins. I told you it was time to choose, Robert, I said. I forced my words out one by one. Get Mackinborsa here. Let him guard my door this night. Time to choose. I didn't wait for a reply. If I had, he'd have had to carry me to bed. I pushed the door and half staggered, half fell into the chamber. I collapsed back against the door, closing it, and slid to the floor. It felt like I kept on sliding, deeper and deeper, into an endless well. Okay, well, that's all for this chapter. I see you next time for the chapter 18. See you later.